My name is Dennis Foley, and I'll be reading Chapter 28. Gil's house seemed sinister and dark, even though it was painted white. Nobody came to the door, so we went by the Wrangler. His dark blue Dodge Ram pickup was there, parked in the lot with many others. They all had gun racks or hat racks, many with roping gear hanging from them. Gil's had a bumper sticker that read, "Ropers need love too." The sheriff called the bar. "Mike, this is Sheriff Duncan. How many guys are in there with Gil?" He waited while Mike spoke. "Oh, we assumed it would be him driving it." He turned to me. "Gil's not there." He listened to Mike a few seconds. "Yes, we found him. He's in bad shape over at the hospital." Pause. "Right, Deputy Ricos and I are coming in now to question those cowboys." Sheriff Ben flipped his phone shut. "There are 3 cowboys seated in back near the stage. Mike says they're part of Gil's group. We'll go in and find out what they know." He took a deep breath and let it out slowly before he moved. When we entered the dark bar, we didn't see them at first, and they didn't notice us either. As we moved towards the back, we saw 3 cowboys seated at a table, drinking beer and having a huddle about something. I would have been willing to bet my paycheck I could name that something. One of them saw us and stood up so suddenly he knocked over the bottle of beer that had been sitting in front of him. "Well, he said, and then he didn't say anything else. "Let's take all of them in," said the sheriff out of the side of his mouth. He called base for a deputy to bring another vehicle, and then he said to the guys, "Everybody stay where you are. We're going to take a ride to my office." "Where's Gil?" I demanded. The wannabe who wore super tight jeans spoke first. "How would we know that?" "You're driving his truck, or one of you is." "What is your name, young man?" barked Sheriff Ben. "Rocky Hill." "Which of you is driving Gil Young's truck?" "I am," admitted Rocky. "My truck broke down." "Where is Gil?" "We don't know where he is." So we waited. One of them started to say something to the sheriff, but thought better of it. From the corner of my eye, I noticed Mike, not far away, standing with his arms folded across his chest in a typical Mike stance. When the other deputy arrived, Rocky Hill said, "I'd like to call my attorney." Sheriff Ben frowned. "You'll be allowed to do that, but you're not under arrest yet." After we transported them, the suspects waited in a room, guarded by a deputy, while the sheriff and I spoke in the interrogation room. "I want you to bring in Gil Young," he said, "but first let's see if we can get one of these cowboys to tell us where he is." I agreed that at least one of them would know. The sheriff went out and came back with a young man who said he was Jess Whitman, 19 years old, a member of the rodeo team. We told him about the vicious beating Austin Williams had endured, and that we strongly suspected his friend Gil. At first, Jess feigned ignorance, but wasn't convincing. The sheriff talked about how serious assault charges are and how much trouble they were in. He recounted that our judge took a dim view of violent crime in general, but especially when it involved the abuse of handicapped people. "I didn't have nothing to do with it," Jess finally said, "but I was there this morning." "Go on." "That retarded fella, he was there too, and I could see trouble coming. I went and got in my truck and left. I swear it. I don't beat up people. I went over to the bowling alley. I worked there part-time. You can call them if you don't believe me." "Describe to us what was happening when you got disgusted and left." "Well, we were going to ride, but that fellow was there feeding the horses, and Gil started in on him." "Started in on him how?" I asked. "It was his usual meanness. He said he was a little pest and he didn't want him looking at us. He called him a shit-shoveling pussy. We all saw the meanness come over Gil, and I could see the man was scared of him. In fact, he begged Gil not to start something. He was just doing his job." "Keep talking," ordered the sheriff. "Well, the fellow picked up a shovel handle to defend himself. He's brave, if you ask me, standing up to Gil like he did. Had he said anything to Gil before Gil started harassing him? No, nothing. At first, he was feeding the horses and trying to pretend he didn't see us. When Gil started in, he tried to make a run for it, but Gil blocked the doorway to the stall. That was when I left. The sheriff leaned towards him and spoke in a confidential tone. Listen, I'm going to let you go, but I don't want you talking to anyone. Your friend Gil is in a lot of trouble, and you don't need that hassle, what with college and work and all. No, sir. Do you know where Gil Young is? I asked. No, I don't. But if he's done something wrong, he's probably hiding. You're going to stay quiet, the sheriff said, and I'm going to call if I need more information from you, okay? Sure, okay. So go. The sheriff got up to bring in another cowboy. Deputy Hanson, who had been watching through the one-way glass, was instructed to call a bowling alley about Jess's alibi before he had a chance to arrange anything with them. The owner was surprised for the sheriff's office to be calling, but confirmed that Jess Whitman had been there when he said he was. Wonders never cease, said Sheriff Ben when he got that news. Next, the sheriff brought in Rocky Hill. He was dressed like the cowboy, but still didn't impress me as being one. He admitted that he didn't make the rodeo team this year. Then, when I pressed him, he admitted he'd never been on the team, but was an avid supporter. So was Austin, but Gil shoved him around and called him a rodeo pussy. Rocky was 20, attended the university, and belonged to the rodeo club. Yes, he knew Austin. Yes, he knew there'd been trouble between Gil and Austin. No, he didn't go to the arena or stalls. He hadn't been since he failed to make the team. You're sure of that? Asked the sheriff. Because if our evidence shows otherwise, it will go hard for you. I wasn't there. He raised his voice to the sheriff, but fixed his beady eyes on me. I stared back at him. He was shorter than the other three men. There was something about him I didn't like. Maybe it was the fat lip where he'd stashed a wad of chewing tobacco, and his general attitude. Where were you today? Asked the sheriff. Just hanging around, here, there. Can you account for every minute of your day? He spit a disgusting brown stream into a styrofoam coffee cup. Pretty much, answered the sheriff without hesitation, but I guess it's like that when you work. If you were there this morning, I said, and you know anything about this, you'd better speak up now, or you'll be an accessory to murder later, at the least. Do you understand? I get it, he said angrily. Nobody spoke. Okay, I was there, he finally said, but I never touched the little freak. Gil had words with him. He shrugged his shoulders like it was no big deal, and then we left. The sheriff and I exchanged a look. His face was red with fury. So that's your story? If you and Gil didn't assault Austin, who did? How the hell would I know? I expect you know because you were there. I swear, man, we didn't. Maybe it was that other guy. What other guy? There was a man there when we got there. He acted kind of weird when Gil saw him. You should ask Gil. We have a few questions for Gil. It would help if you'd tell us where he is. I don't know where he is. Rocky and I stared at each other. Better to tell the truth now, I finally said. I am telling the truth. The sheriff stood. Well, young man, I'm going to hold you until we locate Gil Young. You're under arrest for assault. But I didn't assault nobody. At the least, I said, you're an accessory. You'd better hope Austin doesn't die. The sheriff glowered at the suspect. Deputy Hanson will recite your rights. Rocky slammed his fist down so hard the table shuddered. I didn't do anything. So we're going with the mysterious stranger theory, I said. Was he a one-armed man in a hooded sweatshirt? I don't care what you say. I didn't touch him. And there was a man there. If you're arresting me, I want to call my attorney. What did the stranger look like? I asked. I didn't take much notice. He was tall and he was wearing a brown ball cap. I had the impression he was dark, not black or Mexican, but dark for a white guy, like he had a tan. I think he had blonde hair, Or maybe it wasn't exactly blonde. Maybe it was purple or green. You're making him up, aren't you? He glared at me. No, there was a man there, I'm telling you. Where is Gil? I tried once more as the sheriff cuffed him. I told you I don't know where he is. Sheriff Ben handed him over to another deputy who appeared when the door opened. Book him, he said. If you have any questions about the charges, talk to Deputy Hanson, and the prisoner wants to call his attorney. Yes, sir, I heard the deputy reciting his rights as he led him away. The sheriff shut the door again and sat down next to me. I couldn't tell what he was thinking. Shall I bring in another liar, he asked. We're all here. I guess you might as well. The next young man was dressed in the same cowboy style as the others, but he seemed less redneck, more like a regular college student. He came from money, I finally realized. That was the subtle difference. His name was Robert Devers, and he was 21 years old, a senior. He was well-mannered and well-spoken. I still didn't like him. He was hanging out with the creeps, so how great could he be? I thought the sheriff was thinking the same thing. He said his friends called him Devers, and that he had met the guys at the stables and was going to go riding with them. What do you know about the assault of Austin Williams? The sheriff asked. Assault? Don't pretend you don't know about it, I said heatedly. I don't know anything about an assault. Tell us what you do know, demanded Sheriff Ben. I need to call my lawyer. The sheriff combed his hair with his fingers. I could feel mine going white. Brewster County crime was taking its toll. You need to tell us what you know, said the sheriff. There's no need for an attorney unless you're going to incriminate yourself. We're only asking questions. I left, Sheriff. I swear it on the Holy Bible. Sheriff Ben gave me a look that would have been funny under other circumstances. None of you boys seem to understand how serious this is. The sheriff excused himself and came back with 3 bottles of water. In his absence, nothing was said, although I had a few comments that I held back. He handed each of us a bottle. Do you know that Gil often harasses Austin and has shoved him around before? Yes, sir, I do know that. What happened this morning? Gil had words with him, but when we left, Gil and Rocky were getting into Gil's truck when I left. Maybe it was that other man. Describe the other man, commanded the sheriff. I barely noticed him. He was tall, seems like, and had a black ball cap. He was wearing blue jeans and a red t-shirt, I think. I didn't know him, but he could have been a friend of Austin's. I think he was waiting to talk to him. Was he a Mexican man? Definitely not. He was white and had freckles. He wasn't tan? No. What color was his hair? I couldn't say. He was wearing a cap. On second thought, maybe his hair was reddish. The sheriff let Devers go, but instructed him not to leave town. Once we were alone, Sheriff Ben asked, do you think Gil might have come back alone and assaulted Austin? I don't think it was a tall, dark, or maybe white, blonde, red-headed, black-haired stranger with freckles wearing a black or brown ball cap. He chuckled. No, that seems unlikely. I couldn't wait to get my hands on Gil Young.